Our next speaker bridges the worlds of sales and community and shows how powerful that connection can be. Sunny Prabhakar is the growth director at Bevy, where he partners with global brands to scale thriving communities through live events, user groups, and digital platforms. With more than a decade of experience, Sunny has designed go to market strategies that tie community directly to business outcomes, strengthening customer relationships, reducing churn, and accelerating revenue growth. In this session, Sunny will share how to move beyond measuring support deflection and instead position community as a true growth engine. He will show us how to tie engagement to pipeline expansion and advocacy and speak about ROI in a language that executives can't ignore. Please join me in welcoming Sunny Prabhakar.
Appreciate the intro, Beth. Happy to be here.
We're so excited to have you. Thank you for joining us. We're excited to hear from, growth director himself. How are we doing this? How are we proving value?
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Oops. Right.
So popular.
Yeah, I know. All right. First of all, before we get started, can everyone just drop some emojis, some claps, some fun things for Beth, for Francisco, for Paz, for putting this entire event on and, being with us for these 24-hour events. I mean, this is a huge achievement for the community world. I'm going to be talking about how we move beyond support ticket deflection and improving community ROI, why this is important for us all right now. And the biggest thing here too to think about is that I'm not going to be your typical speaker because one, I've led communities. Obviously, I work with communities today on a daily basis. But I also lead, the go-to-market functions, sales, marketing, the people that you all are going to want to interact with and talk to get buy-in from the community experience. So first thing I like to see in the chat is, what if your leadership could think about one metric, just one, what would be the metric that they are thinking about? What is the one metric that your leadership cares about? If you want to put that in the chat, that would be amazing. Oh, sorry, you hear some little voices. I have some additional coworkers today. Okay. All right. So appreciate all the answers I'm putting in there. Think about that. What's one metric does your leadership, care about here? All right. Bevy, if you're not familiar with, is a community engagement platform. If you want to learn more, you can scan that QR code or you can go to bevy.com to find out. The biggest piece here that I'll share with is that the learnings that I'm bringing to you today have been coming with working with some of the leading communities and brands around the world. Everyone from like the tech giants of Salesforce and Google communities who are always the gold standard, but also from the folks who are like Africa's Talking or BYU in higher ed or Pinterest on the B2C side. So several different areas that, we're bringing this expertise from. But what's on the playlist for today? So I'm going to do a quick about me. We'll talk about the deflection deception, AI's impact on community, programs to outcomes, metrics and ROI formulas. I'm actually going to give some real actionable key takeaways that you guys can use in your daily lives as community leaders here. So a little bit about me, like Beth mentioned, I'm the growth director at Bevy, which means I lead the sales and marketing teams here. But primarily, I come from it from a consultative approach. So really figuring out what people's, problems are, how they're addressing today. Can Bevy be a fit? Maybe. Or how do we figure out, what the right solution is for them at their stage of community? My community journey, I built and ran a completely community-led community in Minnesota for 6 years. I was turned to a nonprofit. We had it fully funded. And a lot of it was bringing it back into that ROI piece and the value that we're able to provide the businesses that we partnered with to bring that community to life. Events and community have been in my blood for ever since I've been 16, 17 years old. And I'm so thrilled that I get to continue that growth and helping brands and companies with Bevy as well. Obviously, you see my beautiful wife. You heard my kids probably in the background as they're running around since school is out here in the US. And so that's obviously taking up a big chunk of my life, but it's the biggest blessings that we've had. So when we talk about the deflection deception, right? Traditionally, if we think about forums in the early 2000s, support ticket deflection was the number one metric that people were trying to prove the ROI of community with, right? So support, and what I'm trying to put here today is that support ticket deflection is still important, but it's not the most important. Business needs have changed. Community ROI proof is needed. We saw it within like the biggest brands when a bunch of the community leaders got cut from their positions, community budgets got slashed. The biggest reason why is because there wasn't a tangible value that was put back into the community. And even if you put the big number out there, hey, we saved $2 million in support tickets, it was a fuzzy math number. It wasn't a real savings that these business leaders could really tie that back to, right? So that's why I'm saying it's still important. We should still definitely report on it. We should still definitely show how that value is being created. But acquisition and retention are going to be the key priorities of business since 2023 and moving forward as people make strategic decisions about budgets, where they're going to invest their dollars, as you know, obviously money and things like that have been a lot more stringent. There are problems are being solved outside of our community. Communities at risk. I'm going to share about that in a little bit here. And then ultimately, job security for all community leaders really depends on being able to show value. And that goes across the board. A job security for a marketing person is going to be able to show the value that they're bringing. Job security for an engineer is going to be able to show the value that they're bringing to the product. So that's not just a blanket statement, but this is like showing that this is what's going to help prove what the community impact is, so that you can really show the value of your position and of the community itself. So the first thing I want to talk about is AI's impact on community. So AI's impact on community has been felt immediately. We've seen 40 to 50% drop-offs from on community pages in terms of page views, visits, time on site. And that is because, you know, with AI, Gemini be providing answers to questions in Google searches, people using LLMs to do that, we're seeing impressions of searches go way up for results, but click-through, which means clicking into the actual result, which is from your community, go down. Which this is why support ticket deflection is no longer going to be a great revenue, a great indicator of what's happening in the community, because you're going to see that number go down when people are getting the answers from your community, but there's no way for you to even account for what's happening there. The other thing that we're seeing is the growth of zero-click searches. So same sort of area here where people are finding the answers from the search results themselves and not actually clicking onto the branded community pages, the branded help docs, the branded support pages, right? So this is a really key indicator of what's going to be happening as it continues to grow over time. And we're going to see people continue to get answers quickly outside of the community, even if the answer is coming from the community. And so obviously you all have seen the CMX mantra, but in case you haven't, we have the widely accepted spaces model, right? So support, product ideation, acquisition, content, engagement, success are all part of what will generate the business of community. Thank you, Beth, for throwing that link into the chat here. If you haven't read David Spinks's book, The Business of Belonging, definitely check it out. It goes into this in much more depth. But so what I want to say here too is, like, when we think about how like a gold standard like Salesforce has taken some of the spaces model to heart, is that this is how that they have been able to show to leadership the power of the community, and to get leadership to invest into community and to continue to build into what's going on in here. So not only are they seeing, okay, after they used Bevy, they grew, 7x from the community size. That's great. That's amazing. But what is that doing for the business? A 2x increase in ACV value. So ACV is average contract value. So a 2x increase in people spending more money from current customers. A 3 times reduction in people leaving the company. Leaving as a customer, and a 35% higher platform adoption rate. These are really, really powerful metrics that business leaders cannot ignore. So when we think about community and how is this going to add value in the go-to-market journey, right? We think about the buyer journey, the customer journey. There's several different models out there, But an easy way to think about this is that there's a stage that every person is going to be in, no matter where they are in their journey. Either their awareness is like thinking about the problem, evaluating solutions that can, solve the problem, adopting the solution to get really into the problem and fixing it, expanding because they've seen some really amazing results, and then advocating for your brand or your community is being the final piece here. And some of the influential activities that we're seeing here, this slide deck will be available after, so feel free to steal all this for sure. But some influential activities: webinars, user groups, user-generated content, blogs, gated content. So you get them into this awareness funnel. The evaluation stage. Now they're going to be meeting with others. They want to hear social proof. They want to understand how other people are using this product before they take the dive themselves. They want peer feedback. They want to read reviews. Think about when you go buy anything on Amazon. What's the first thing we do? We look at the reviews. When we want to look at a new movie that's on Netflix, what do? We look at the reviews. Same thing when people are buying software, or when they're buying your product or whatever thing that you're supporting here as a brand. Adoption. This is the key piece that community can really have a big influence on. And you heard John Wisher talk about it a little bit too. It's just like that education, the user groups, getting peers to be able to learn from each other, knowledge-based articles. How do you increase the chances of your customers not only getting into the product, but being really successful in the product? And then once we've solved those things, it's the expansion areas, right? Ideation. Do we have a suggestion box where people can get their voices heard? Do we have product AMAs where people can get in front of the product team and get involved in that side of things? Are there user groups where they can learn how other people are using different parts of the product and get involved in those areas? And then again, the peer learning aspect, that word of mouth aspect, like, oh, what is Nina doing that I'm not doing that I should be taking advantage of in my own company? Those are leading to natural progressions of, that's when we talk about increasing the average contract value, natural progressions of customers expanding their initial license or contract with the company. And then advocacy, right? This is where you identify your power users, identify your leaders, you get them into a customer advisory board, they share direct feedback, they become your stickiest people, they take you to the next company that they go to as well. They are going to be the ones that lead challenges. They're going to be the ones that you give ownership to into the community to run their own groups, their own events, and you really incentivize them. Gamification, you give them tickets to your big customer conference, you give them swag, you get them representing the brand. That's what is going to create that advocacy part where they're going to start to sing your praises outside of your initial network. So I want to define a couple of terms here, and this might be really basic for some of you, but for some of you, for the folks that I've talked to, is, these terms are kind of foreign language, right? Community leaders don't really talk in these languages on a day-to-day basis versus like sales or marketing, right? So SEO, right? We've heard that term all before. Search engine optimization, getting your website to show up in Google and Bing searches. GEO is the new way that people are talking about AI engine optimization. So how do you get your community's content to be surfaced in LLM searches? How do you get your events, all those kind of things to be surfaced? And when people are going into ChatGPT or Perplexity or Gemini to ask questions. And MQL, so a marketing qualified lead, a lead that has passed initial qualification for sales to work. Guess what, community folks? You all have a big impact in that MQL number, and there's a clear way to tie that back in community attribution. I'm going to go into some of this in a top level, but I'm happy to dive deeper on a one-to-one. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. I love talking about this all day. SQL, sales qualified lead. This one's a little bit out of your control, more of a lagging indicator is what we would call this. And this is when sales has qualified the MQL or the prospect and is pursuing an opportunity because of the hard work that you all have done in the community side. So source pipeline is going to be where the deal or opportunity originates from the community. And so, or from, whatever source, but for this instance, talk about community. This is so key and critical. This is literally the attribution, the dollars and revenue that your community is driving into the business. And then there's influence pipeline. And this one's a little bit more of a gray area, but it's opportunities that the community touches along the buyer's journey. So maybe they came in from a demo request form, but then they attended a community event, and then they attended a user group event, and then they attended your product AMA, and now they're becoming a customer. Those are all community touch points along the way that have influence along the buyer's journey. And there's easy ways for you to attribute that, as long as your CRM and your Salesforce or your HubSpot or your ingrown solution is connected to the community activities that are happening in the system. So think about like programs and the different areas to do and the outcomes that they drive, right? So some of you have said that member growth is a key metric. Some of you have said that impact on sales and adoption, NPS, revenue, retention metrics, these are all key parts of it, right? So picking the program that you want to start with when you are really trying to focus on the go-to-market side of things is really important and key, and making sure that it's tied to a direct outcome that you can measure and influence. So a user-led content, which would be like, discussions, posts, maybe you give the ability for people to put in blog articles or knowledge articles, events, Q&A that can lead to SEO and GEO support and peer support. Champion-led peer groups can give you easy references and social proof areas, and those are going to be really easy for you to track. Onboarding cohorts to make adoption really good, and office hours to give you a faster time to value for these customers, and you're going to be able to measure that over time. Product ideation and forums, obviously going to build brand trust and give you, again, that higher adoption rate. And then HQ-led events, the webinars, the product AMAs, the customer conferences are going to be the ones that generate those MQLs, the SQLs, the sourced pipeline pieces of things that are, again, going to be very easy to track if you're tracking the community attribution into your system. Now, the caveat, I'm going to take a pause here, is saying that, look, all of this hinges on you all being really, really good community builders internally. So what that means is, how are you building relationships with your sales leaders? If impact, Jack Vaca said that impact on sales and adoption. So how are you building relationships with your RevOps team and with your CS team to really understand how you're going to be able to connect these two things together? That is going to be the biggest thing, right? So building those relationships, spending time one-on-one, really coming into the conversations of like, I want to help. Beth does that a great job with us too. She says, hey, I want to help. How do I help? What do you need? Where are the big gaps that you're seeing? What programs can we start that we can look at together? What are customers asking for that, we don't have content for today? What are some things that we can build together? And you get buy-in to build these relationships together. That's going to create really, really strong partnerships for you all. So I have a few formulas that you can use and steal. Definitely take these. I'm going to, in this, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip through these pretty quickly. But look, support savings, we saw, John Wisher talk about that too. It's deflected tickets times the number of dollars per ticket. And you have to work with support and finance to find that number of that dollar per ticket number. There's influence pipeline, so that you have a deals with community touches. You have influence percentage and value. You work with your sales and ops teams on that. Source pipeline, expansion, impact percentage, retention, impact percentage, and champion impact. The key part I'm going to point out on all of these formulas here is that each one is not something you can build on your own. This is something that you need to do as a team. You put together a tiger team or an ecosystem of people for the metric that you want to push. And you talk about, okay, how are we going to do this together? Here are the numbers that I need to get from you. Here's the numbers that I want to give to you. How do we connect these two systems together and build this into a repeatable process where you have a dashboard that says, hey, this is what our expansion impact percentage is. This is what our source pipeline is. So that when you're giving your executive reports, it's so easy, just screenshot, boom, here's what we did this month to show the real value here. Yep, I know it sounds confusing and it's probably not something we're used to, but for proving the impact of community, it is the business hat that we have to wear as community leaders. And it is going to give you the best opportunities to have voices in these rooms with the business leaders or executive team, ELT, the CEO, with what happens. So if you were thinking about a simply put 90-day action plan, because none of this is easy. I'll be honest. It takes work. It takes effort. But once you do it and you start building it, you're going to see some real fruits from your labor. So in the first 30 days, this is where you're networking internally. You're defining what your key performance indicators are going to be. You set up the tracking, you build the dashboards to affect this change. you move really quickly on these things. The longer time that you take on any of these key areas, the worse it's going to become and the more convoluted. They're going to bring in 10 other stakeholders that have nothing to do with community, and it's going to delay you. So go fast. 60 days in, we're going to pick 1 to 2 metrics that we're really going to focus on. We're going to pick the programs that are going to affect those metrics. We're going to create internal enablement. So this is key. So not only does the conversation end after we figured out the metrics, after we start the programs, we build the programs, we're going to have another meeting with all of those key leaders and talk about, this is what we're going to do. This is when to expect these things to roll out. This is what you need to be paying attention to. And you can ask things from them now too, of like, okay, Sonny, what is going to be the playbook for when sales sees these MQLs come in from these events that we're running? CS team, what is the playbook that we're going to run to expand these accounts when you get these buying signals from the community? And then we measure and refine that together. 90 days in, you're going to be able to do a QBR style reporting to that same team of, here's what we were able to influence. You tell me what the results were on that side of things. You're going to be able to create an ROI executive summary. We have examples of this, by the way, too. So feel free to hit me up in the DMs if you want examples of what these summaries and reporting should look like. And then you're going to define the success metrics. In 90 days in, you have already figured out and tested and experimented something, right? Now we can define, okay, success is going to be a 5% lift here, a 6% lift here, a 10% lift here. Maybe we need 80 more members into the community. We got to run an events program, get the word out there that this community is existing. So these are the ways that you run, and it's these 90-day, these 12-week sprints. If you haven't read the book 12-Week Year, I highly recommend you do that, because I can almost guarantee you that every sales and marketing leader on your teams have read that book, and that's how they're operating their operations as well, and the things that they're testing. So I want to leave some time for Q&A for sure, but just some key takeaways here. Look, support ticket deflection is it will continue to become harder to prove. When we see these 0 click-through rates and AI answering the questions and pulling all the amazing content that you have in the community into AI, you're going to see your support ticket deflection numbers go down. And it doesn't mean that you're not deflecting any tickets. It's just harder to prove. Deflection alone means that it will not be enough to justify the community. Networking internally, I almost hate that I put this in this slide, because I realize how icky of a word networking is for everybody. This is going to be the most important thing that you can do in the next 30 days. Get the buy-in from the other people in the team. Figure out where you can find common roads and commonality. Take the time to meet with them, build those relationships. Go-to-market and CS metrics are always going to have the highest priority in any business. Why? Because the businesses exist to get customers and support customers. That's why all of us have jobs, right? So that is going to be a highest priority for the ELT, for the executive leadership team, for the CEO. That's what they're going to be measured on. So you want to be measured on the same thing and show the value that community is already doing it. And that's the biggest point I want to put in here today too. You all are already doing it. Community is already doing all these things. It's just about how you tell that story. And that's what I want to help you all do, is telling that story really accurately, and then being able to measure if it's going up or down over time. So when you're thinking about community platforms, when you're thinking about community strategy, don't be concerned about features. Look, you don't need everything to be completely personalized every time somebody comes into the community, because guess what? They're finding answers elsewhere. So be more concerned about the outcomes your programming is driving than if you have the winking emoji in your chat. Okay. Low engagement is going to equal to low ROI. And so you can see all of the programming pieces that I've talked about is all about driving more engagement into the community. If we don't get the engagement back into the community, there is no way that you're going to be able to show a high ROI from the community. So get that engagement up by focusing on the different programs here. I'm going to skip the bevy pieces. But again, thank you. You can feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. This is my email if you have direct questions or specific to you. But I'd love to open it up, Beth, to Q&A from the crowd.
Thank you, Sunny. I so appreciate hearing your perspective on this because I mean, obviously, Sunny and I work together. We collaborate pretty well, I think, kind of determining like how we can help each other and how we can, get things from each other. So it's always really nice to hear just like your perspective. So we don't have any questions, which I'm shocked by, but I do, and I want to have these some of these conversations with you. Um, so one of the first things that I thought of that I would like to hear from you is like, how do you go about balancing the chasing revenue outcome and goal with still keeping the member experience authentic? Because that's something that I really protect at CMX and Bevy. But like,
Yeah.
I would just love to hear your perspective on like how you're thinking about it, how you show up in the community, and how you're making sure that you're like making it still authentic.
100%. Look, the worst thing we could do is be like, hey, community team, here is a demo of Bevy, for example, right? That's nobody wants to hear that. Nobody really needs to hear that. They're not ready for that in most cases. So the way that we think about even our sales process, even to the community side of things, is like, how can we bring in more customer stories to educate people first, right? So if I can connect Beth with, John Doe at Salesforce because he ran this incredible program that had all these incredible, driving metrics. But if whoops, they also are on Bevy, and if he gives us a shout out, great. But if he doesn't, not a big deal. But if you can bring your community value with the different events and the programming that you're running, that's going to be the first paramount piece of it. And then if you throw in like a slide or, shout out to Bevy, or shout out to Atlassian or whoever else is there, then people can, find those things on their own leisure. But the best part is that when you do those programs and you do it around a topic that your product can solve, is then sales can see who is actually interested in that product. Now, if they can't go in and be, obviously overly blasting like the community, we should definitely protect that. And I think that's where like, the internal networking really comes into play. You have to have a really good relationship with the community leader and the sales leader or the CS leader to say, hey, this is what our rules of engagement are going to be with these people who come to the event. This is the journey we want to take them on. Maybe they came to the event and sales can reach out and be like, hey, here's our next event. Here's the community industry report from CMX. Here's some other things you might be interested in, because buying habits have changed. Nobody's going door to door anymore. Well, some people are, and I've fallen for that. But for the most part, people are really educated buyers. And so how do you just give them the right material so that when they're ready to make a decision, they're going to be looking at you all first and you stay top of mind? And that's where community really comes in.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned the, like, authenticity of it. I mean, you I, as a member or as a consumer, I don't wanna be the target of just, like, blanket marketing. I don't want it to be like, like, where I have to identify if this is relevant to me. So when you're talking about, like, okay, so maybe we have, 1,000 people who come to this event, how do like, you also wanna make sure that the emails you're sending are gonna hit. So you want to make sure that you're not just sending 1,000 emails, like who are the people and what are they doing and what are the programs they're running? What are the problems they're solving? It's like you don't want to reach out to someone who can't use the product you're selling because that is inefficient. And you also want to protect your inbox.
Yeah, 100%. We could do a whole deep dive on this. I know we only got like 1 minute left. So I just want to say quickly, what we do is that we use HubSpot for our CRM. Every event that we do, it goes through a fit score check. So that's checking company profile, title, those kind of things. We look at engagement before. It's a very manual process for us. We treat these people like people. We don't treat them like numbers. There's no marketing blast campaign. It's very personalized, tailored emails. We have a educational content that we're ready to serve up, but it's not a like, oh, thanks for joining the event, here's what Bevy is, if that makes sense.
Definitely. Well, and I mean, this is a great example because one of our CSMs reached out and was like, we just had a customer ask me about hosting a 24-hour event. Will you talk to them? And I was like, yes, I want to brag about this event and how it all came together. So that's like some really authentic connecting right there.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Sunny. It's always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for sharing all of your experience and your knowledge on our stage.